Hello and welcome. Today we've got Senator Mike Morrell, and today we are going to be discussing what's happening in Israel, the upcoming elections, China, and the education system. Now, just before we begin, you can subscribe to my Instagram channel at nicholas.veniamin, where you can follow all my newsreels. Mike, thank you so much for joining me. How are you, and what have you been up to?
Well, I am doing fine, and I've been busy. The good news is, as you know, I wrote the book, The Road to Restoring the Family. So, October, I think I had 12 speaking engagements in various parts of the state, up in the Silicon Valley, which they had a good number of people, over 100 people showed up for that. So that's kind of encouraging because that's such a liberal place, a bastion. Got to speak in Lake Tahoe, so I had some fun up there. And then I did about a good number of podcasts, and I had some radio interviews. And once a month, I write an article for the Epic Times. And so my calendar's been busy working, trying to do anything I can to help, promote God, country, and family. So I've been busy. And then when I'm not busy on those things, my wife, Joni, has me busy doing things around the house. So my cup runneth over.
Very interesting. Absolutely. Now, obviously, we've got a very big, elections coming up is it going to be Joe Biden? Obviously, a lot of people think it's not. He's a disaster. We're seeing Vivek Ramaswamy, Trump, obviously. We've seen his performance as president, of the United States. So people are very confident with with Donald Trump. What's your views on the upcoming elections?
Well, a lot of my Republican friends are very much against, as I am, against Biden's policies, right? But I tell my friends as I speak, don't try to kick him out of office. We want him to run. We want him to be the nominee because I think he's very beautiful. And here's what I'm very afraid of, and I've seen this coming for a long time, as I'm sure you have, but Gavin Newsom, he wants to run for that seat, right? And here's the thing. Number one, talk about a guy, in my opinion, with Marxist ideologies. He has them, right? But he's a pretty boy. He's good looking. And unfortunately, there are people that are shallow out there. I remember when Bill Clinton and Al Gore ran and won. They won what was called the soccer mom vote, who drove minivans, if you remember that. And one of the reasons is because they were youthful looking. And so, that's what pushed those guys over. And so Gavin Newsom has all that. He can speak really well in only sound bites. I got to spend 3 days with him a few years back in Austin, Texas. And I noticed he can't go very deep. But think about these forums that they have in these debates, they call them. They're not debates. Remember Lincoln Douglas debates is Lincoln would talk for a half hour, and then Stephen Douglas would refute him for a half hour. And so today, the last one I heard, when they closed, they said, tell us in 30 seconds why you want to be president of the United States. That's ridiculous, right? The most important job in the world, and you've got 30 seconds to say that. So those are not debates. Those whoever can do the quickest sound bites. And that's one thing Governor Newsom's good at, is quick sound bites, but his record's poor. Like I say, he's a committed, in my opinion, Marxist ideology. And then the third thing is he knows how to do the sound bites, but I do think that other than that, he's pretty shallow, because I saw him during that conversation in Texas sort of get shut down when you really go deep into a debate. But I think he's a dangerous man. And he sounds, if you listen to him when he's on television, he sounds reasonable. And so that's why I would prefer Biden to be the Democrat nominee more than I would perhaps Newsom. And I think Newsom would do even more damage than Biden. So those are things that concern me.
Of course, I know what you mean, because we're very confident that Biden will lose, which will mean the Republican will win. Absolutely. I was listening to Trump, and he was saying, it doesn't matter if you're Democrat, conservative, whatever. It's all about common sense,
Mm-hmm.
and it's true. It's having common sense. How do you think we are going to have fair elections or, in the next election? How are we going to make sure that we're not going to have any fraud, and we are going to have more, fairness? Well, have fairness and, voter ID in our elections to make sure they're honest.
Well, a couple of things. Here's what I'd like to say. I am not a conspiracy theorist, but I believe there is cheating in the elections. And the reason why, in 2010, when I first ran for politics, at 8:30, the first votes came out, and it showed on the TV screen, it was only 3% of the votes had been counted, 3%. And I was ahead 8.5 points. So there was a man from the newspaper at our party, and he said, "Would you like to make a victory statement?" And I said, "But only 3% of the votes been counted." He says, "Mike, I've been doing this for over 20 years, and whatever it is right now, it's going to be the same in 2 weeks from now." And sure enough, 2 weeks later, I was at 8.5% ahead. In 2012, when that first vote came out and it was 3% of the votes had been counted, and it was an 8:30, I was 9.75 points ahead. That ended up washing down to about 1.5%. I almost lost that race. And so what happens is I hired 18 young college kids to go to the voters registers office. And back then they were allowed to do this, to observe. And they were actually able to stand behind the people who were counting. They just could not disturb them. If they had a question, they had to call the floor manager, and then they'd come over and decide if they throw that vote out. If memory serves me correctly, my young kids ended up finding over 5,000 questionable votes that we were able to lobby to get them thrown out, and they got thrown out. And so that didn't happen 2 years earlier. It happened in 2012. I could see 5 or 6 or 7 votes. What they were, a lot of them were absentee votes as well as provisional ballots. And a lot of them were people who were registered to vote. So they popped up that they were registered to vote, but they were not in any of my cities that I was going to represent. So it was votes coming from outside. And so, again, that can happen 5 or 6 times, but not over 5,000 times. So I believe I was one of the first people to ever get to see actual fraud going on in elections. And since then, I think they've made an art of it, and it's gotten even better. So I think we've got to clean up the voter rolls because even still, there's different places that I see through election integrity where you have people who are 127 years old still on the voter rolls, people who have died, as you know. And so we've got to clean that up, and we got to do voter ID. And you know what? My personal opinion, it's an honor. It's a gift from God when you look at history that we are not ruled by dictators or kings anymore, but we the people can elect our own leaders. And so I think that's an honor and a privilege, and we should have to be able to show up, unless if you're sick or maybe you have some type of a physical ailment and cannot get you the polls. But this is America, and this is an honor to vote. So again, we should show up, and ID has to be mandatory to think. And I know, by the way, I figured out how you can get around without ID. It's so easy. It'd take me a while to get into it, but we've got to clean this up, or our country will soon die here. Because if the Democrats get in, this is my personal opinion, but I'm pretty sure I'm right, they're going to make Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. a state so they can add a few more electoral votes. And then the second thing I think they're going to do is they're going to take the Supreme Court and take it from 9 to 13 people so they can have, their way. And then they want to get rid of the Electoral College. And those will be things that America will never, never, never be able to recoup from.
It's terrible what they're doing with Donald Trump. They're trying to remove him from the paper ballot so that people can't even choose him, I believe. But I like it when you say that you're not a conspiracy theorist. Neither am I. But I have to say, I liked Trump because there was no wars. I mean, call me a conspiracy theorist, but I like no wars. I prefer mean tweets and have no wars. So tell me about what would happen if Donald Trump came in. What would happen to the disaster that's happening right now in Israel and Palestine?
Well, a couple of things. I like what you said about mean tweets. That's not why he's in trouble. He's in trouble because he knows there's a swamp and he wants to get rid of the swamp. And so all these players, these multinational companies, a lot of them, everything, people who control, where they want one world government. This guy has disrupted what they've wanted to do. That's why they're after him. And so I think what Trump would do, he's got a tremendous amount of common sense. He understands human nature. Yes, he does some mean tweets. He's a lot abrasive, right? And I've struggled back and forth in this current election about, should I vote for Trump? Shouldn't I? Shouldn't I? Bam, bam, bam. Should I go for DeSantis because I like him? But as this war broke out in Israel, and then when we pull out of Afghanistan and all the things that are happening, the threats that China is threatening us, right, overseas, and then Russia, I'm thinking I'm back solidly in the Trump camp right now, because I think he will deliver. I think he's got a lot of tremendous common sense to do the right thing for our country. And I do believe, even though he gets a little wild, I do believe he's a man who loves the United States of America. And again, he can be abrasive, but he will protect us, I believe, providing God helps him. and I think, again, like you said, he just those policies, and when I've talked to people too, and they find him abrasive, I said, well, what about his policies? Generally, they can't find any policies that they had a problem with him, right? And so I think they're in these times. Biden right now, I mean, he looks and he acts weak. Let me tell you, these guys in China, the president of China and Putin of Russia, these guys are cold-blooded killers, right? And so they're looking for opportunities to kill, steal, and destroy. And let me tell you, they can sense weakness, right? You and I can sense weakness in a person. And Biden, I mean, everything you look on different memes and stuff like that, people, are in this country are making fun of him because he can't even talk, he can't walk, he can't make decisions, his language is not clear when he speaks. And so these guys love weakness, these Russians and these Chinese people. And that puts fear of God into me, that I'm hoping and praying they're not going to take advantage of us at this point in time in history. And so we need a leader in there who's going to make decisions that are going to benefit America and protect our country. And so Americans need to, really realize, we've not ever had a war on this land other than the Civil War, right? But we haven't been invaded by outside forces. And so, these things are becoming a reality. And again, I'm not a conspiracy theory, although remember the Caesar, when he said "Ute Brute," his best friend, not you too, Brutus, stabs him in the back. And then, of course, Christ had a great conspiracy against him too. So I know they're out there, but we have to be very careful on this election.
We do. We definitely do. I think I agree with you. I love Donald Trump's policies, strong borders, the First and Second Amendment, and even the biggest deportation for illegal immigrants in history, because he needs to clean up the US. So to make sure that, young families are safe, the education system needs to be cleaned up. So, and I definitely believe that they don't like him because there is a swamp. And I think that Donald Trump is our last card to drain the swamp. And I think he will be very successful at it. I have faith in him. Let's talk about the China. You mentioned that China has threats. What kind of threats are you worried about that China is imposing?
Well, things that I've read, they have surpassed us in a superior naval force. So that's one thing they're building up. Second thing is they've taunted some of our fighter pilots in the China seas as they're flying over. They come within like 300 or 400 feet of their jets. Again, just intimidation. And then they have insinuated that they want to take Taiwan over, just like they did Hong Kong, right? And so we have said that we will protect the Taiwanese people, but I'm worried with our weak leadership. Like Biden on this Israel thing. It's amazing to me. I mean, it just blows my mind that I'm for Israel. Oh, no, I'm against Israel. I'm for them. I'm against them. I'm for them. I'm also for Hamas. We're going to send them money, as they said yesterday, but we're going to make sure that money is only going to be used for humanitarian causes, right? And these are people who can't be trusted. And so we cannot have a president like this that does not draw the line in the sand, plant the flag, and clearly communicate what our intentions are if anybody messes with the United States of America. This guy is not doing this. So, because we see it right now regarding the Israeli Palestinians fight. And so imagine that as the president of Russia and China are looking at our leadership as well as our military. Think about our military. It's at an all-time low. And what are they teaching these young people? Are they teaching them to fight and defend our country, or do they care more about the proper pronouns? You know, I mean, this is a real thing. They're teaching them proper pronouns to use. And another thing too, because I've talked to people in the military, the training is not as vigorous or hard as it used to be because we're letting anybody in. You know, we've lowered our standards, we've lowered the bar, not just there, but in education and all across America, even in our police force. You know, you don't have to lift as much weight or run, the time as quick as you could before. And so all this sends signals to our enemies that America's weak. And so at the appropriate time, you know, they want to, like I say, kill, steal, and destroy and expand their empire. And America's been a threat to them economically, politically, morally, as well as militarily. And so I think the thing is those things, are concerning because China has been taunting the United States in various ways, as I mentioned earlier. So those are not idle threats. They're looking to poke holes to see where we're weak, and I believe they're seeing a lot of weakness. I'm seeing a lot of weakness, as are you. And so those are opportunities for tyrants and dictators to take advantage of. That's what concerns me.
Absolutely. Speaking of the education system, I want to mention the Centner Academy School in Florida, Miami, where the children are learning how to, how to eat healthy, how to avoid sugar, how to, manifest and learn things that a traditional school doesn't learn, and how to love yourself and everything to do with thinking like a business leader, like being a leader, believing that failures is okay. We learn from failures. We become stronger from failures. Whereas current schools and the education system, they shame you for things like this. So I want to mention to people about the Centner Academy. You should definitely have a look out for them for your children. Do mention that you heard this from Nick V or Nicholas Veniamin. So let's talk about your book. You're an author of a book, very inspirational. Why don't you tell us about it, please?
Yes. Yeah, well, when I turned out of the California Senate, I thought, what's next? So what I wanted to do was leave the best possible advice as I could to my children who are growing so that they can instill the right values and principles to be able to thrive through these difficult times, right? And they would pass this stuff along to them. So what I started doing is I would just write a chapter on different things, on the abolition of education, on things like, prayer and quiet reflection. I wrote it on finances. I wrote it on defending freedom and our duty to defend the United States Constitution. So teach them a little bit about that. Also about marriage, how to have a strong marriage, a strong family. And so I tried to get chapters that would instill the right virtues into them so that they know the highest goods. So they know how to be adults who are moral, honest, and also can produce and not be, in the course of men, not be emasculated today, right? But to have, firm footings and not be babied, but be able to survive in a very difficult world. And so I would write a chapter on courage, for an example. I wrote one on finances, and then I would save them up, and I was going to mail them off, one at a time every few months to them, right? And so Joni and I were kind of reviewing those one day, and she said, you've got a lot of stuff here. She says, our kids are going to be raised with their kids. She said, you ought to turn this into a book. So what I decided to do is I did that. And then I had about 4 people edit it for me to clean up my mistakes. And then I tried to write it in such a way to give the best advice possible. So I borrowed a phrase from the first paragraph and the second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence that says there are self-evident truths in this world, and they're found in the laws of nature. Nature's God, meaning God places in the human nature and history self-evident truths. So when I wrote about politics, I went to the home of politics, which is Athens, Greece, and I stood on the collective shoulder and used the collective wisdom of Aristotle, Plato, and Socrates. I looked over to Rome, which that was a political powerhouse, and looked at Marcus Aurelius and Cato. And so I took their collective wisdom, put it in this book, and then I brought, where appropriate, into the Holy Scriptures, right? And I did that on every chapter, on of course, the spiritual things. I looked at Thomas Aquinas, C.S. Lewis, and everybody in between. And then I took that collective wisdom on each chapter and placed it into that book, because I want to make sure my kids and grandkids were getting the best advice, not Mike Morrell's advice, but the best advice we could possibly get. And so it's been edited by people smarter than me, too, because I want to make sure I clean it up. And again, I want to give 100% on this book, because families right now, families, a stable, strong family will make for a strong America. We cannot have, the majority of men in prison come from fatherless homes. Young women girls, these pretty girls that get into prostitution, typically have come from homes with daddy issues. So across the board, families need to stay together. God says in his scriptures that he hates divorce. He only says a few things that he hates. Divorce is one of them. And Frederick Douglass, the former slave and eventually an advisor to Abraham Lincoln, said, it's easier to build a strong family than it is to have to repair a broken man. And so I think the thing is, family right now means a lot to people. As people think the world's coming to an end, people are angst up. So I think it's a timely book, The Road to Restoring the Family, on Amazon. And I think will serve your family well if you're watching this, as well as enrich the lives of those you love and your family, and pass on to them. We want to put as many chips in their corner and increase their percentages and their odds of surviving, and not only surviving, but thriving during these difficult times where the culture, music, television, even our schools seem to be against our children and our families. So I put my best foot forward on that, and I'm hoping that people in your audience will buy a book or two. Or I'm noticing baby boomers are buying 5 to 6 books at a time, because they remember how life used to be when we could play baseball out in the street till 8 o'clock at night. We used to walk to school, right? 1 or 2 miles. We'd walk to school. Today, parents don't even want their kids walking 1 or 2 blocks to school. If you go by almost any school, you see the cars lining up in the morning to drop them off, and the cars picking them up, because we live in such a dangerous place. I was on the radio yesterday with a young lady who has a successful program here in Southern California. And she says, I don't even let my kids play in our front yard. They have to play in the backyard, because, we live in very dangerous times. So anyway, that's the book, The Road to Restoring the Family.
Well, listen, thank you very much. It sounds like a very inspirational book. Where can people find it?
Yeah, they can go to Amazon, and they can just type in either Senator Mike Morrell, because there's more than one Mike Morrell out there, but Senator Mike Morrell, or they can type in the name of the book, The Road to Restoring the Family.
Wow, amazing. Well, thank you very much, Senator Mike Morrell. It's been an absolute honor to have you on my show and to give us your opinions on everything that's going on with current events. Is there anything else that you'd like to say to the viewers before we finish? Yeah,
I don't want to be too negative. I have a lot of hope for America. A couple of things I want to share. Number one, these parents returning to take back over the school board meetings is a movement, which has never happened in America before. That's number one. Number two, I was up in Silicon Valley a couple of weeks ago speaking at the Silicon Valley Republican Women's Club, and they got 3 people elected, good people, to the school board up there in the Silicon Valley. And next year they're going to hit for 6. That happened there. That happened in another city down here in California, and then 2 other cities in Southern California. So things are on the move. People are doing things. But let me close with this last thought, because it's a compliment to what you do. I never knew until I wrote this book that there were so many people podcasts. I mean, you have millions and millions of people now. They no longer trust CNN, NBC, A lot of them don't even trust Fox News anymore. And so it sort of was, again, I'm older, so this is like a new thing to me, these podcasts. But you guys are doing a great job getting the real news out there, timely news. And I think you guys are shaping the opinions about on our country. So I just want to, again, thank you for your program, because I think you guys are doing something really good for America. And I think there's a movement here, because there's millions of people who are watching podcasts like yours. So thank you for that.
No, thank you very much. It's people like yourselves that come on and make that difference and help us, with our platform. So thank you very much. And we'll speak again very soon. You take care and God bless you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.